Today, Yom Tovaya of the Shavuos Daf Daled. As you know, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, less than 2 years from Rosh Chodesh Sivan, we're going to finish the cycle of Daf Yomi. Mitzvah Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Tov Shin Pei Zayin, together with Mashiach. We are up to now Daf Daled by the 2 dots from the middle of the page. And basically, we are discussing Shavuos Ha'edus, and we wanted to know that the Eidim, don't say they have nothing to testify on behalf. Then they swore about it, and then later they conceded that they lied. We want to know, how do you know it's only limited to cases of monetary matters? I know that if he says, I'm a kohen, I want you to swear that I'm a kohen, and they refuse, and then later, they say, we don't know, and then later turned out to be that they lied, they don't bring a carbon. So we have 4 different pshatim in the Gemara. We had Rabbi Lezer said we learn out from the word, says twice the word oi, so we compare it to Shavuos Daf where it says also the word oi twice. Then we had Rabbi Akiva, who says, it says in Pasuk, V'hoya ki yeshem la'achas me'ela, that you are guilty for one of these me'ela, from these, so not all Shavuos, only those that deal with money. And then we had Rabbi Agluli, who says, who aid either he knew or either they saw or they knew. That means it's possible seeing alone is enough without really understanding what they saw, or understanding is enough. They didn't see. That only can apply to dini mamonos, the money matters, which we'll come back to in a minute. And we already said the case where that's applicable. And then we had Reb Shimon, who learned it out ultimately from Gzeir Shava Sechta from Pekodin. And just like Shavuos of Pekodin, where he said, no, he never gave me a deposit. Is money, talking about money matters. Same thing, Shavuos Eidus is only talking about if it's if they're withholding testimony regarding a monetary issue, and they could have helped you. Now by the withholding the testimony, they're hurting you. That's when we say that they have to bring a carbon oil of a yerid.
You said Lamed Dal?
Lamed Dal Shavuos, right, 2 dots. Rabbi Akiva, and now we're revisiting each one of these Tanoim, so we've already went through the first 2, now we're up to Rabbi Akiva. Akiva said, it says, if you're guilty for one of these, so we learn out the fact that for one of these, it means it could be more than one. If you made 5 vows outside of the bezin, because remember, it has to be done in the bezin. You made the vows outside the bezin, but then you went into the bezin, you made 1 denial, you only bring 1 carbon. But me'ela, so yesh me'ela shuchayiv, yesh me'ela shupater. Some vows you chayiv, some vows you pater. Okay, so when are you chayiv, when you pater? So if it's a money issue, then chayiv, and they withheld the testimony, then they are liable. So that's something else. For example, I need support that I'm a kohen, pater. So how do you know? Maybe eifachana, maybe the other way around. Maybe money matters, you don't swear, and everything else you do. So Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva Oyin, the Rabbi Loza Samach, he relies on the fact that it says twice Oy. When it comes to Shavuos Eidus, it says Oyra Oyoda, and it says twice Oy when it comes to Pekodin, where it says Oy Bitsum B'Siyad, Oy Begezel, either alone or stolen, Oy Ashik, or whatever. So therefore, he relies on that. So then, if so, my benayu. So what's Rabbi Akiva adding that Yesi Hagluli already didn't say? Says the Gemara. As Rabbi Lezer didn't say. My benai ben Rabbi Lezer give, what is the difference between two? Ikar, I know the difference is mashbia ede karka. What happens if the edim that I'm asking to support me is about a dispute with land, and I'm asking them to come and dispute to support me, and they withhold the edis? Li Rabbi Lezer chayavin. Rabbi Lezer says you are chayiv because by returning gzela, we include, if I steal property and then it got flooded or something else, and I say hareisha chalafanecha, the heishiv like gzela includes karka as well. So therefore, Rabbi Lezer holds that the karka is included, and the edim that I need, or the edus that I need, is regarding karka. It's considered a monetary issue, and they withhold the testimony. They bring a covenant related. Although Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, the apata. Going to Kiva, the Apotter Edith Karka is not included from the carbon Shavuos Eidus. Said Rabbi Yechon, according to Rabbi Yechon, and according to Rabbi Yechon, the Amar.
It's a lot in the Ma'aser.
No, we'll learn the Gemara. It's only a few blocks from now. What this argument is all about, Edith Karka, if they're included or not included, to do with whether you learn Klal Pata Klal or even Meiji, but we'll see. They refuse to. They say we have nothing to tell you.
No action involved. They're just
Yeah, but they say we have no aiders for you, and then we swear we have no aiders for you, and then they concede that they swore false. And Rabbi Yechon the Amar, he says, Hosha, Hossam, he says over there, Mashbiya Eide Karka, that Afilu Rabbi Lezer, even according to Rabbi Lezer's pattern, we'll see the Gemara in a few days from now, what exactly the crux of their argument is. Yidhochem Ma'yika Bein Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Kiva. So what is the difference there, Rabbi Kiva? Like Rabbi Lezer says, you learn that from double oi. And Rabbi Kiva says that you learn out from what it says achas me'ela. It says ika benaya. The difference is eide knas. The difference is eide knas. Whether eidim by knas, not mammon, but eidim that they can support you for a knas, is there then and they withhold the testimony. What happens then? Is there, for example, they saw him shecht 4 or 5 times. They show him shecht a cow, a stolen cow, or this, and they're withholding the edus. Do they bring then that carbon oil of the yader? Do not. That's the machlekes. Because achas me'ela means some of these don't apply, and some of them do. Some of these don't apply. What's the knas doesn't apply. Says the Gemara. Rabbi says this is another opinion we had the Gemara. It says in Pasuk, who ate oira oyada, that they know or they saw. Where such aidis effective? Only when it comes to monetary issues. So we know that this din of oil the only monetary issues. But aidis that aidis can be applicable either just seeing or just hearing or just understanding. So it sounds like Papa says to Abaya. Sounds like Lema, Rabbi Yasi Haglili, who says that generally speaking, ADIS is only effective if they see and they know. In other words, there's no such thing as circumstantial evidence or probability. They have to know everything. This is an exception when it comes to monetary issues. It must be that Rabbi Yasi does not agree with Rabbi Acha. Rabbi Acha, as a rule, holds that circumstantial evidence is good enough. And as the Shani point out, that if a circumstantial evidence is good enough when it comes to money matters, it's also good enough when it comes to other matters as well. And Rabbi Guli says only by money it works, nowhere else. And the case that we gave over here is that he said, you counted
why would you extrapolate and say just because it's good for this moment, therefore we'll say it's good for everything else?
No, that's Rabacha.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay, we'll see in a minute.
I'm trying to understand this.
Okay, so Rabbi Acha says that if a probability is strong enough, you can say you saw it. I'll just see in a minute. The Tanya Rabbi Acha says, if you see a camel wandering about between them, or kicking the camels in the back, then you find a dead camel lying there on the side. But you do it, no question. Did you see it? No. But the case of probability is very strong here. And even though you didn't see, but it looks like this appears, that's what happened, so therefore it's good enough. But he does if it would hold like Rabacha that circumstantial is good enough, then it wouldn't only be by money matters, it would be din nefashis. We would find it also by din nefashis that it would hold. And what's the story? And Rabbi Yezekel says that this only applies to monetary issues. So obviously, he doesn't believe generally in circumstantial evidence. When he says over here that without seeing, the example he gave was that Shimon was made to Reuben that I borrowed from you $100. They never saw, they heard it. They never saw Shimon borrow the money, but they know because he said it. That's what he said by knowing without. But without Adim, there's nothing. Those Badin works in front of a bezin. Here is the Adim, and they never saw the loan, but they don't know about it. So this is not really circumstantial evidence. This is much more than that. And seeing without knowing is they saw money changing hands. They have no idea whether it was a loan, a gift, whether they were returning his money. And the other guy said, no, I never gave you any money. So therefore, the Adim they're good enough. And the other guy said, well, if you have a proof that you gave me money, then I'll pay it back to you. So the Aiden don't really know whether it was a loan, but they saw something, and that's enough. So the Gemara, what's the story of Shimon Shatter? We had this in the said, what I should see, my consolation in Lloyd Easy, if I didn't see once, so a guy running after his friend into, again, a friend, into this into these ruins, where chased after them. What says he found Sayyid a knife and a dagger in his hand, but the blood was dripping, and the corpse they were still shaking over. He was just killed. A Michael Russia. Me Hargulaza. Oh yeah, Niato. There's only two of us here. So who killed him? Me or you? So I was a you, but I didn't see it. What should I do that I cannot kill you? And why can't I kill you? You must amaze. There has to be witnesses, no witnesses. The Shem really ask, even there were witnesses, there's no warning, you don't get killed. Unless he was a chaver that doesn't need any warning.
Oh, we're talking about that the invaders here. We're not going into the protein like did he have a straw? Did he do a turkey leg?
No, but his comment was, "Oh,
Yeah,
you're right, you're right." What he really meant was, like some shame said, he's not going to specifics. He's just saying here, it's quite obvious what happened here, but there's nothing I can do about it. But I want you to, and you part of Hashem will take revenge for this person. They actually say, he didn't move from there. A snake bit him, the mace, he died. And he died. So we see clearly, Shimon hold that circumstances is not good enough. And Rabacha would hold that it is good enough. And Rabbi Yisrael Gluli obviously hold that circumstantial evidence is not good enough, not Rabacha, an exception by money.
So by the Bacha, in this case,
we would, yes, that's what it seems. That's how many are trying to learn. That's like Shnai Major.
The circumstance.
Also, Shemashach is alone. If two people would have come to the scene and seen this, it would be considered Shnai Major. I feel Tamer, that's no proof. I feel Tamer says that even if you want to say that he holds like Rabach, in other words, the point is that if he would hold like Rab Acha that circumstantial evidence also worked by murder, then he can no longer say that the din of Shus Eidus is limited to money matters. It could be limited to murder matters as well. So the Gemara, even on the whole Rab Acha, okay, we found the case here. You found the case circumstantial evidence. You didn't actually see it, but it's quite obvious what happened. Okay, by murder. How are you going to find a case? The other one that if you just saw but you don't know what you saw, that you will charge this person murder. That we don't have. Only by money. By money, they saw the money changing hands. Here, what's going to be? It's not enough just to see a murder. You need to know. Oh, you saw who did he kill? Let's say you saw, but you don't know what you saw. You don't know if he killed a yid or a guy. Then you wouldn't put him on trial. Or did he kill a person who was dying exactly, or a person that was whole? The Shani Mask, we have a rule, if you're not, we say that we go after the Rav, that's always a healthy person. But you're talking about a case that there were two people. We know one of them for sure was a healthy person, one wasn't. And then the other person who survived ran away. He's not here anymore. So we don't know the person that died. Where was he? Shema and I guess you make an autopsy, they wouldn't know. So fine. So that's how we know it's limited only to money matters. But what he holds regarding circumstantial evidence, we can't prove one way or another.
This meaning of traitor, isn't the halacha that nobody should ever touch a goisus because he might speed up his death by a moment?
Yeah, you shouldn't. But there's no miss on that. You don't get.
He's a traitor. You're saying he's going to die anyway.
Exactly, but don't miss it. It's still you're not allowed to kill him traitor. Bezin, a capital Bezin is not going to. He's not going to. Yeah. So the Gemara. Said further, he also holds only Eide Mammon, but not Eide Knas. Like we said before. What do you mean? Why not Eide Knas? Because he's like that if he holds an Eide Knas, are also Chayiv. So it's a new thing. He's like that. That Chayiv. Tell me how the two cases are. He did the ability Ashram. We find where they have the knowledge of actually seeing it. We can find. But the boy he made for example, in the case of Knas, they raped a girl or whatever it is. So it's possible to have some, some very strong idea without Riyah. But how do you have Riyah without idea? How do you know whether, for example, they saw him with a woman, have no idea who that woman is, right? But they saw an act, but they don't know you did, right? They don't know details. Miloi boy made a Nachris ball, a Bas Yisrael ball, don't you have to know whether it's a Yid or a guy, or Basula ball, a Bula ball, whether it was a Psula virgin or whether a Bula. So therefore, it's impossible to have, so you ate a Knas as well, must be they're not included in this din of carbon oil because he says only in places where Yedi alone is sufficient or Ri'i alone is sufficient. And by Eidek Nas it wouldn't. So the Yosef Ramluna came out of Yehuda, Ramluna same for Yehuda, Yosef Yehuda, they asked the question to Talmidim. I counted money in front of this and this person. That's what he said. The Eidim roin oise bechutz, and the Eidim were standing on the outside. The Eidim they were standing on the outside of the room, and the way Rashi learns is the person, the defendant, never saw the Eidim, didn't know, and he said, "Yeah, give me the money as a loan." My, what would the din be over here? What would the din be over here? Is it considered that the Shavuos Eidim they withhold the Eidim if these two Eidim don't want to reveal their testimony? And the problem is if they're outside is that the defendant can say, since there are no witnesses and it was really my money, but you weren't ready to give it to me, so I said, you know what, let's give it me as a loan. And I was sure one day I'll go to bed and I'll tell them the truth. There wasn't a loan at all. It was my money. That's the only way I can recoup it is by playing along with him. That's how Rashi seems to be learning. So he says a different shot. So the Gemara, said to his Rebbe, I don't understand. Let's look at the case. What does the defendant claim? The plaintiff says, I have two agents in the other room who saw me giving you $100 notes. What does the defendant say? It never happened. If it never happened, then who's the kafir? So even though these people in the outside room have no idea whether it was a loan, a gift, or what it was, or returning your money, but you're a liar because you said nothing happened. Yeah, you said nothing happened. So once you who's a kafir, we wouldn't make you swear anyway. We have nothing. So therefore, you no longer be believed, or you no longer believe about anything. And if he says, no, if he swears it was my money, wouldn't believe you. You already proved that you're a liar. And yes, 100%, I took the money, but it was my own money I took back. So what's the agent going to help over there? All the agent knows is there's so money changing hands. They have no idea what the situation was. So what's the question here? Either we said the agent are not adding anything. It's just the agent when they're holding back in this case. What are they adding? It's definite. If he said he never gave me any money and the agent holding back the testimonies, the agent are liable because they're impacting it. That the plaintiff is not going to get his money back, but because he denied that he ever got it. And if he said I got it, but it's my own, then the agent doesn't contribute at all to the case because it makes no difference. Melissa was very impressed. And he said, Hamnuna, at oil ta. You come into the room here, you belong here with all the Chashiv guys and learnings. Yehuda always got complimented by Shmuel Shinla, you intelligent one, I guess, learned from his Rebbe, and he started complimenting his Talmud. Saying about further, a guy said to his friend, I counted money on the side of this pillar here, on Malay, and the defendant said, I never went to this, I never passed by this pillar. Also, today's side, they came along to witnesses as Hidebe, and they testified, yes, you were here once, we saw you urinate. Who's a kafir? That's it. He's a liar. Maskul, as I said, hi dina pasa. This is nonsense. Why Mika Amma did he say ma'olam? Did he say I never went by this pillar? Base exact kamle. All remember exactly. I was not here. Or you get another version is the guy said, friend, I gave you money on the side of this pillar. Even in this case where he added, I was never here. Nofke Beisadi came along to witness and they said, the Hishtin Mayo that we saw you urinate. Oh, but Nachman was a kafir. In that case, yes, he's a liar. He said he was never here. Omelette Rabbi Nachman. Now Rabbi Nachman's student Rabbi said, Kol Milsa when a person goes to urinate, he doesn't really look exactly where he's going. And it's not important to remember. People, it's useless knowledge, trivia. People don't really think about it and they push it out of their mind. So it's possible that he doesn't remember that he urinated. You're talking about something that he was there deliberately to do a transaction, to do something significant, not something which is totally insignificant. Next opinion, the fourth opinion, he said, how do I know that it's only money matters? Because right afterwards it says Shavuos Pekudin, and there's only money. I gave you a deposit and you swore you never did. So therefore, that is monetary issue. So we get a monetary issue. Thinking about a Machkel and Marav in Israel, they smiled when they heard this whole pilpul from Shimon. Thinking about my chukah, what's the joke? No, they thought it didn't really make sense. Why? So the Tani, because he said, Malik, Rav Shimon first said, I have a Kalachaymer. Kalachaymer is that Pekudin is so weak. Right? That's right. Pekudin, the first he said, but Pekudin is so strong, it makes no difference if you're qualified to be witness, not qualified to be witness, that it, and so on and so forth. and yet it's only money matters. Surely, when it comes to Shavuos Daf, which is very limited, only to qualified people, only to men, and so on, and only in front of a bezin, is also only money. So then Rab Shimon asked himself, "What am I talking about? Shavuos Daf is much stronger. Sorry, Shavuos is much weaker." And therefore, maybe that's why the money. How is it weaker? So he says it's a the Tony Shimon said about himself. Malat pekadon shekain loy osa by mushba kenishba. By pekadon, the Torah only talks about a person who volunteered to make a vow. I don't have a deposit of yours. It doesn't say if the mafkid says, "Hey, are you making swear that mashbiani, I jure you that you don't have my deposit." And he says, "Amen." That's treated like a shur. Where do you know that by pekadon? Doesn't say that in Torah at all. Right, so the Shimon understood that by pekadon only if they swore on their own, not if somebody else swore and they just said amen. Masha'egi by Shavuos Daf is all the way around. The Torah only talks about Shama Karlola, only if somebody else makes it swear. We don't even know by Shavuos Daf that if you swore on your own and you have no testimony and then you lied, then you bring a carbon over here. It's only because we compare to pekadon, as we'll soon see. Then they laugh. Why they laugh? But you said you came also by mushba kinishba. You don't treat on mushba like a nishba. In other words, on mushba does not have the din of Shavuos Daf. You don't make a carbon. And also it said he said mezid k'shoigig, that we separate mezid and shoigig by pekadon. By Shavuos Daf, if you did it by mezid, you lie, you still bring a carbon oil, but by pekadon only for shoigig. Mechti, let me ask you a question. Mushba b'pi'atza be'edis. You know why it doesn't make sense? Because where do you think you learn that by Shavuos Daf itself? If he made a shvur, volunteered a shvur, how do you know that you bring a carbon oiligated? It's only because you learn from pekadon. That Rav Shimon the gamma pekadon. No, pekadon nami. So if you learn one way, Shavuos Daf from pekadon, that mushba that pekadon nam mushba enigma medis. Then then the same way it goes back and forth. So pekadon will learn from Shavuos Daf. Just like Shavuos Daf is also in a case where what do you call it? Where mujma pe'achedim is a din of a shvur, so too by pekadon, if the mafkin made the shvur, the same thing applies. So the Gemara says, so my chucha. What's the joke? I don't understand. Dilmo Rab Shimon b'kavachayim ma'isla. Maybe Rab Shimon does not learn Shavuos Daf from Shavuos pekadon. He learned, like we learned a few days ago, that within Shavuos Daf itself, it makes a kavachayim. Now what? Doesn't make sense. If someone else makes a shvur and you just say amen, you're chayiv. It's a tacit agreement. Sure, if you made it yourself. Yeah, I don't have to learn from anywhere else. You know the joke is this distinction between mezid and shaygig. Tony, you said because you also by mushba but mezid is shaygig by pekadon you only chayiv by shaygig. The guy forgot that, for example, that he had the pekadon there, but not by mezid. If he swore by mezid false, you don't bring your carbon ashim. Mechdi. Mezid gabe edus we know, but yet Shavuos Daf we know that if even by mezid you bring carbon obligated. How do we know? Because the like siba nelim, because it doesn't say he forgot. By tumah, by Shavuos Beat it says that they forgot, you bring a carbon. By Shavuos Daf it doesn't say that. It doesn't say you forgot. So obviously, even if you remembered, you bring a carbon. No, it's the same cheshbon. By Shavuos Beat also doesn't say he forgot. So therefore, even by mezid you chayav sure. What's up Shimon saying? Amlu Ravuna, my chuk of the joke. Dilma mezid the lav kishaygi but pekadon. You know why by pekadon is different? True, it doesn't say the word vanilla because we learned from the word meila. It says the word mal both by mila when you steal from Hegdish. It says mal here by pekadon, and therefore mal, and therefore we learn from there just like by mila. If you did it by mezid, every holds you get misa. But the Rabbanan says there's only a lav, and the din of mila, you bring a carbon and all that, and you pay the extras only if you did it b'shaygi. So pekadon the same thing. From there. So the Gemara says, behind the chuch, you know what the joke is? Why are you learning from Mila and you're chayiv only by shoygig? Nigmalam edus. Learn from edus. That what? That even makes it. Okay, you have a limit there. You have a limit here. Says the Gemara. I'll tell you why. Mistabra and Mila have a limit. No, Mila she came Mila because it says the word mal here. It says the word mal there. It makes sense to learn from Mila. So you know, you have nefesh gesechta here, nefesh gesechta here. But it says the word sechta, so long as they shove it from Edis. Why go jumping to Mila? So when it says Mistabra, it makes more sense from Mila. It makes more sense to learn from Mila. Why? Halamela, Shekay Mila, Bakol. Mila applies to anybody. And so just like pekadon, it applies to anybody, not like Shavuos Daf is only to men and only qualified aid and so on. And then in case of middle, you're enjoying it. Pekadon also, he's stealing the money, enjoying it. In the case of swearing, I'm not giving you my testimony. What did they get? What did they engage from it? Nothing. And bikavua, what kind of carbon do you bring? Not a carbon oil of the yoda. You bring a fixed carbon. Here's a chatla, here's an osha, but it's fixed. And chaimish, you pay a penalty of an extra fifth. And the osha, sorry, you both of you bring an osha. So l'chayda, it's more similar to Mila. There's nothing, so therefore it makes sense. First of all, chet, it says the word sechta in both of them. Number one. And Heged, both of them are talking about ordinary people, an ordinary thing. We're not talking about Hegdish stuff. Bishvua, both of them deal with a shvua. But maybe don't do a shvua. You stole from Hegdish. Tove and Kafir both deal with a claim and a counterclaim or a defense. And our oyin, and both of them have the word oy double in both places. Where it says that Hana Nefishin. But Meila has more similarities because Tvia and Kfira is considered one. So Meila has more similarities. It makes sense if Shimon says that we live in Meila only Shagig. So what's the joke? What the joke is, they came from the Shiva Rav. It's still called the Shiva Rav, even though it was many years later he passed away. Amri say, "Hi, you know what the joke is? Mechdi." Rab Shimon Gzeida Shava Gomer. Rab Shimon concludes. At the end, the conclusion. First, he didn't learn. He tried to Kabbalah. Then he concluded. You know what? Shava Sechta Sechta. So normally the parich. So why did he ask Malda Pipkadon? She came loy also by Mushba Kimishba Mezig. So why did he ask if you have a Gzei Shava, Sechta, then they're all the same. So what he's starting off with the premises that they're very different. Here's only Shagig, there's both made the Shagig. Here is only Mushba Mashbia, and there's not Mushba Chedim, and there's both. So just like you learn from the Gzei Shava Sechta, that is talking about money matters, learn from the Gzei Shava Sechta, that applies to all these other things, Shagig, Mezid, and all that. The joke. Maybe that Kumar is before he knew the Gzei Shava, but before he put it in, but Boston come like the Shava after he knew about the Shava, he doesn't ask anymore because he Taka does learn. Maybe Taka agrees now that Maze is included. That premise was before he knew Gzei Shava. So Gemara, no. Who's the one to hold that Shavuos Hapakotin loy nitins dainu lekapar? Who's the one who makes a distinction between Mazid and Shagig by Shavuos Eidos? And they told him Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon. In other words, as if even in the conclusion he makes a distinction between the two. But if you have to get Shavuos Sechta, why? The Gemara says. Dilma, maybe no, that's what I. Maybe his kvetch is only on Mazid and Shagig. Remember, we just said we learned that from Mila. Mila is only by Shagig, and he has a Geshav as well from Mila. Dilma Mazid Shagig Parich. Maybe he was asking only about Mazid and Shagig, and that could be even in the Maskana. He still believes that Shavuos Hapakotin is only limited to Shagig, even though we have Geshav Sechta, because he has the other Geshav from Mila that's only limited to Shagig from Mal. The Gamla Mila. The Hanach Lefisha, we explained before that Mila has more similarities to Pekotin. But the other din of Mushba Nishba, we take a doolin for Shavuos Eidos. Attack you no longer, are they different? Like Parich, and Rabbi was not asking a question from that. The Gemara says, but Ted and Eidos, but Tigmula Pepakotton. So now you're telling me that Pepakotton is only limited to Shagig. So maybe we should learn that Shavuos Eidos of Pepakotton, and also Shavuos Eidos should be only limited to Shagig. Mazid, the Lav Shagig, Mapakotton Shagig Mizloi. Let's learn, just like Pepakotton, only Shagig. I've Eidos Shagig in Mizloi, Geheli, Av Yod, Pepakotton, Megil. Just like you learn Pepakotton from Ela to limit to Shagig, learn now Pepakotton to Shavuos Eidos. So the Gemara, you know what? Lahachi kasva rachmana le'edas gabe shvuos bitu. That's why the Torah lines up all these shvuos and put shvuos eidas next to shvuos bitu, and over there by shvuos bitu, the gabe tumas mikdash kedusha, the bekula nema behelam to highlight. All of them it says he forgot, and then suddenly when it comes to shvuos eidas, the Torah does not say the word behelam. The kala never behelam. That's a very strong message. Lechayiv ala mezik shagig. Here you chayiv on mezik, just like you chayiv on shagig.
I can say it wasn't a very funny joke.
Well, look what Gemara makes smile. Jokes don't make them smile. They like it's learning.
The irony of the
Exactly. Okay, have a good day. We'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.